republic for which it stands, God, indivisible.
All right, item 1.3 is approval of the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Chair votes aye and the agenda is approved. Item 1.4 is input from the public. This is a period devoted to comments by the general public. If any, in the event of privacy and due process, the public is requested to not raise personnel issues except in a legally noticed closed personnel session of the board. Comments are limited to 3 consecutive minutes. A speaker's time may not be reserved, divided, apportioned, or deferred. No action may be taken upon a matter raised under this item of the agenda until the matter itself has been included specifically on an agenda as, excuse me, an item upon which action will be taken. Is there anyone who wishes to make a comment? All right, excuse me. Moving on to item 2.1. Receipt, review, and possible acceptance of the bid for the FY24 asphalt repairs at Sage Elementary School and Adobe Middle School project submitted by Ruby Dome Inc. and conditional award of contract to that bidder. All right, Mr. Anderson.
Yep. Can't remember if it was the last meeting or the one before, but recently permission was given to go out to bid. That happened. And we had a couple of bids come in, and one of them is much lower than the other. If you have specific questions about the bids, Stephen, I'm sure we'll be happy to come up and answer any of those questions, but the information about the quantities of the bids are there, along with a recommendation to accept the bid from Ruby Dome.
All right, any questions for Stephen? All right, how would the board like to proceed?
Madam Chair, I move that the board accept the best bid for the FY24 asphalt repairs at Sage Elementary School and Adobe Middle School project submitted by Ruby Dome Incorporated and conditionally award the contract to that bidder, subject to the timely submission to the District Legal Counsel of all documents required by the instructions to bidders, including 1, the signed contract, 2, proof of required insurance, 3, an issued performance bond, 4, issued payment bond, and 5, completed project apprenticeship report.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? All right, all in favor of approval, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay. Chair votes aye and the motion carries.
Thank you.
All right. Item 2.2 is receipt, review, and possible approval to allow ECSD to go out to bid for the Spring Creek High School Food Science Lab project. All right, Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, so this is a project that feels like for the better part of a year, we've been talking about this, whether it was about design or various, we've had presentations about it. And the last time this was on an agenda, the board gave approval for for Stephen and all of them to go out to do design on that project. So that part has been completed. The next step is to seek approval to go out to bid. I do have a public comment that was submitted specifically about this item, so I'm going to read that to you. It was submitted by John Carr, and he says, I respectfully request that you present this email to the School District Board of Trustees to table action item number 2.02. I have read the previous minutes on this project and I am not opposed, but I think in the spirit of the law that was recently passed by our legislature and governor, I would recommend that the committee that is now required be immediately formed and review all capital projects. I believe this committee, looking at all of the projects and making a recommendation to the county commission, would have great influence in the timing of the property tax increment and the amount. I'm unfortunately not able to attend this meeting as I'm already scheduled for another meeting. I personally believe, and not speaking for the whole commission, that the sooner this committee is formed and making recommendations to the commission, the sooner it can act on setting a property tax increment. To give some context to what he's referring to, he's talking about AB 519. Which had to do with the Owyhee school construction appropriation, which part of that bill also talked about levying, our county is required to levy a tax. And part of the requirements of that bill, I believe it is section 5.5, states that for that tax that is levied. The county will have a panel. So in here, he said committee, but it's referring to a panel, which has specific people that are supposed to be on that panel. And that panel would have oversight over all capital improvement projects when that tax is levied. So that's what he's referring to in there. And so that is his comment about this item. I want to make sure that got out there before we got into too much more discussion. As we did similar with, I think it was the North Side
Gym and
gym and classrooms, similar to that, just as we haven't done a whole lot of big capital improvement projects with this board because there hasn't really been money to do big capital projects, but there are phases and at any given phase you can say, hey, we're, just like we did with the North Side one, the design was done for that. And then we said, okay, we're going to stop there and just keep the, or you can progress further, go out to bid, then see what the bids are like before going out to actual work on it. So that's where we are in the process. Steven's he's here to answer questions if you have them. There's an opinion on here of probable construction costs as well as a design for you to look at. And I think at this point, we're ready to entertain any questions, or you guys can do your discussion.
All right, do we have questions from the board?
If I may, go ahead, please, Aiken.
No, that's all right.
I was going to say, if I may, in regards to Commissioner Carr's request to table, the timing of this, I don't recall when permission was given to go to bid. I don't believe it was the July 18 meeting. It was prior to that, correct?
Permission to go to bid or design?
Sorry, design.
Design. Yeah, it would have been prior to that meeting.
So the project itself was actually in process before AB 519 passed.
Yeah.
Which would have been in effect. I don't remember if it was effective immediately or if effective July 1.
The bill?
The bill.
July 1.
Either way, we'd already started that process. I would assume that it'd be grandfathered in unless there's specific language within 519 that says all projects from henceforth are under this. I understand where Commissioner Carr is coming from, and I certainly want to work with the commission to the best outcome for the citizens of Elko County, and particularly our students. But I also don't want to delay this process any longer. And we've already, as you mentioned, been talking about it for about a year now. So do we have any legal input as to if we need to stop this?
From a legal standpoint, I guess I should probably let legal give legal opinions, but my understanding of the bill is that we are perfectly fine to go forward with this if that's what the board wants to do.
Okay. Sorry, Susan, did you have something?
No.
Do we have other questions from the board or discussion?
I would just like to echo concern of maybe looking into this a little more so that we are working well with the commission and on that request. And I am looking for some more clarification on that on 519 and how that applies to this particular situation. And also what the committee, if you get me up to speed a little bit on what that committee entails going forward on further projects and what we're looking at there, and what would that slow down, or if we were to table this today to get that done, I mean, what kind of a delay would we be looking at?
Would you like me to read the wording of the part of that bill that talks about the committee or the panel? Would that be helpful?
Sure.
All right. It says the Board of County Commissioners of a county whose population is less than 100,000 and which levies a tax pursuant to section 2 or 3, and that refers to the additional tax, to section 2 or 3 of this act shall establish an oversight panel for school district capital improvement projects consisting of 5 members selected as follows. And then it names the 5 members, one who is either the chair of the Board of Commissioners or a designee, one of you all. one member who is a member of a federally recognized Indian tribe or nation and appointed by their tribal leadership. One member who is a resident of the county and has experience in the building of school facilities appointed by the president of the Board of Trustees of the school district. And one member who is a resident of the county and has experience in the financing of public works projects appointed by the chair of the county commissioners. So those would be the 5 people.
And does that committee have any kind of veto power or anything of that nature? Or is it an advisory committee? Or I'm curious what the application of any committee decision would be as opposed to us, is it being able to move forward or say we have another project going forward? How's that going to affect us?
Yeah, gotcha.
And what that entails as
Mhm.
opposed to this project?
Yeah, so the oversight panel shall meet once each calendar quarter, and they shall review all credits to and debits from the fund for capital projects, recommend future uses of the money raised by the county from levying the tax, review the amount of any appropriation, grant, gift, or donation received by the county for the construction of school facilities located on qualified tribal land, and make a recommendation for the date of termination of a tax levied.
So that's just making recommendations, it sounds like.
Yeah, so it doesn't say in here, so oversight doesn't mean they could say like, yeah, it doesn't say they can tell you, no, we're not doing that project. But there are other actions they could take, which could terminate the tax, so to speak. I think there's other language within the bill that talks about a minimum amount of time that tax must be in place as well.
So, sorry,
Yep, no, you're good.
if I may, a couple of things that come from this as a result of what Ms. Anderson just read and the language itself. We have multiple tribes within our county trying to decide who is going to be the Native American representative. Could take time. And I don't know how that process would be flushed out because it doesn't say who gets the power of that appointment. It just simply says it must be appointed by the head of one of those tribes. Now, it may be referring in general to the Shoshone tribe, Shoshone Paiute, but I don't know. There's, I don't know the political ramifications of what that stands at. So that's one consideration that will undoubtedly delay it more than what we're probably anticipating. The second thing that I'm looking at in this project that we are discussing tonight, we've already budgeted to come out of existing pay-as-you-go taxes unless the county is looking at establishing the fund immediately and then using those funds to pay for this project. I don't see that there's any oversight on this. So from an oversight standpoint, I would say this is a moot point, but to play nice in the sandbox with the other kids, that's I think really the only thing that we should be considering. And if we're going to play nice, then we need to consider what that's going to cost us in delayed time. So that's just my opinion, certainly nothing from, any authority, just my understanding of what it reads. Now, if the county says, yep, we're going to establish this tax and that tax is going to pay for this building, and that means that we get to keep the pay-as-you-go taxes for other projects, great. But I didn't hear anything in Mr. Carr's request that gave anything close to a promise on that. And even if it had, he can't speak on behalf of the commission unless he's duly authorized to do so. So there is a delay if we table to get additional information back. And that certainly a 2-week delay, I don't think would be unreasonable, but I don't know that we're going to get answers to those questions in the next 2 weeks.
How far would 2 weeks push back like our plan? Because our project isn't even if we go by the timeline we currently have, it's not till next year anyway.
It's not until next year, and the completion date as of right now is still that August, start of that next fiscal year.
Yeah.
Potentially,
Just estimating. I know, we're not. It potentially could. It could be fine. Either way,
or it could push it out depending on materials and things like that. That if we do decide to go with this project tonight, the sooner the better. We need to go out to bid immediately to meet those deadlines.
Other
Does
questions?
immediately include 2 weeks?
pretty close.
I mean,
Yeah.
Are we talking significant
No, and
differences?
I
moving
think,
from-
you know, as long as we're making an
15.
informed decision, then yeah, so.
I also want to throw out that this is the first I've heard of it on the night of. This has been out since Thursday. I don't have anything. Does anyone else have anything from any other commissioner?
No.
And so I don't know. I don't know if timing, whatever. I mean, I'm not going to read into timing other than this is last minute, last second. Like, I don't. And just to play fair, there wasn't playing fair when we were talking capital improvement because I was here with that. So if we're going to talk about playing fair, we know that that wasn't the case before either. So let's also talk about the potential for the tax and even at maximum, the minimum that it's going to really bring to the district otherwise. So nobody's talking about that. They're just talking about this money that might come to the district, but we all know that that's cumulative. And that the cost that the district incurs with all of our capital improvement will far outweigh what we'll get in that levy of tax too as well. Not to say I don't want it, okay, we do. Every little bit counts, but let's not talk about how this is a huge weight that's going to be lifted because we get this.
And best case scenario, in reading through the language of the bill, if we table, so let's not even go there. Best case scenario, we wait. The county says we're maximizing the 25% levy or 25 cent levy. We wouldn't see those funds until the soonest we would see them would be July 1 of 2025, if I understand correctly, which means that then, assuming we get 25 cents, it's approximately $5 million. We would then be able to devote at least current cost of that building all to that fund. We're looking now at a construction date of, at earliest, August of 26, correct?
Yeah.
So that would mean that the 6 classrooms that are needed at Spring Creek High School today are then delayed an additional 3 years.
Yeah, thank you for bringing up. I was going to say next. So, yep.
I think the most important thing is what's best for kids.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand you wanting to play in the sandbox, like I get that too, but you know, we had talked earlier about when we move forward on this about the equipment that they already have. I mean, I don't want to speak for the others that are part of this project, but I'm pretty sure they're excited about this moving forward. And then to have yet another roadblock, I'm not sure if that's really fair to them either. Just kind of my 2 cents.
Okay.
Other thoughts from the board?
Stephen, I had some questions in regards to the bidding types. Working with other public agencies in the past, construction manager at risk, build, design, bid, getting other aspects of how do we control costs a little bit better, not to disparage any contractor that's out there, but it always seems that when we just say, take the low bid, there seems to be a low bid, and then there always seems to be change orders, which then all of a sudden take your the $3 million project, and all of a sudden now it's 3.5, 4.5. How can we best control that? And are any of those design processes better than others?
In most cases, the school district uses a design bid build. I think the reason behind that in most cases for school districts is they ultimately want to be in control of the products that the contractor's using. And then any unforeseen things that we see that we want to make changes to, we have that right to do so. The construction manager at risk, that ultimately gives the power to the construction manager that's managing that project to make those changes. So for example, if, you know, the project is $100,000 and the flooring that we had originally spec'd out or wanted to use went up in price, they could change that and we wouldn't be getting what we want. The one thing that it does guarantee is that the price doesn't go over that specified value. I think with this project, either way we go about it, it's pretty straightforward. It's a pre-engineered building. We've got the design in place. It's not It's not anything new. We're not reinventing the wheel. So I think the design bid build is probably the best option for the school district right now. It'll probably be the fastest just because we haven't had that construction manager in this design. So he hasn't really had any input on what he would like to see in the project. It's all been between the school district and the design architect and his engineering team. So.
Okay, does it change how the bid is put out? Do we have to specify this is how the bid is? I mean, obviously, if it's a CMAR or a construction manager at risk or something else, that's.
Yeah, the language does change when we put this project out to bid.
For the board's purposes, if we want to specify a particular design build status moving forward, what's the timeline of what that looks like to give you and your team as well as anyone else within the district?
When we go into design, when we ask for approval to go into design would be the best time to do that, because that's when that construction manager would be heavily involved in these projects.
Okay.
I'd like to ask a question, or mostly just to clarify something, but right now we're just approving whether to go out to bid. We're not actually writing a check right now.
No,
We're
and
just
we'll
asking for, so even, yeah, okay.
We'll come back to you and,
It would still be
after
another-
the bids are up, all submitted, just like the Ruby Dome one.
Yeah.
And you guys will approve
Just like
it or
we did with
disapprove it
2.01.
at that time.
Yeah, and I just wanted to make sure that if we decided one way or the other, that we knew kind of timing on that. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Next thing I have is when going out to bid, obviously we have 10,000 students and their families that are going through Elko County School District schools. The more we support local, the better it is generally. I understand that sometimes there's an upfront cost to not taking that as a low bid if there is a contractor that's local versus a contractor that's out of the area that has a lower bid. In the long run, though, we're keeping the monies local. Therefore, there's that return on investment within our side. Is there a way to control that at all to give a certain percentage of bid or
Like a bid preference.
Yes, thank you. That's the perfect term.
There was a 5, and I want to speak to legal, so there was a 5% bid preference to state local contractors. But that was disregarded in 2000, whatever. But I will get a definite answer on that at the next board meeting.
Okay.
As I know of right now, there is not.
Okay.
That would be discrimination.
So local organizations, local government have the ability to oftentimes be more strict than state law, but can't be less strict than state law. When you talk with legal, theoretically, could we be more strict? And obviously I know there's a preferential thing there and there's a discrimination thing. We are being discriminate. We are saying we want local. Sorry, Utah, we don't want your people. We want Nevadans, or more specifically, Elko County. That's discriminant. I get that. When we have that discussion, I'd love to be able to say, can we exceed what the current state law says by putting these requirements in to support our local families?
Yeah, I'll be sure to ask those questions.
Go ahead.
if there's no further discussion, I had something that
Okay.
I wanted to say, and then I want to go ahead with the motion. But in order, in discussing this, tabling would only delay the cost that we're going to get. And I don't see any problem if we want to move forward with this item to go ahead and at least get the bids in. That costs us nothing. Tabling it would only cost us time in this issue. So in the interest of that and wanting to move forward, I move that we approve the Spring Creek High School Food Science Lab project and authorize the initiation of the bidding process for qualified contractors.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have several. All right. Is there any other discussion from the board?
As we move forward, I think that now that Commissioner Carr has opened the door, I think we should, whatever the process is, begin that discussion of how do we start to form this panel. get the idea from the commission of what their levy rate is going to be. And I think formally, however we need to do that, we formally begin that process and with respect and appreciation to the commission.
Right. Any other comments before we vote?
I would echo that, as far as playing nice in the sandbox, I want to do that. Me making that motion to move forward isn't any disrespect towards the county commission. It's just the fact of after asking those questions, I know that moving forward doesn't cost us anything. And we still have that time if we need to make changes or adjustments to do that at a later date. So I see nothing wrong with moving forward here.
Thank you. And I can agree with things that everyone has set up here. You know, Susan, what do? We do what's best for kids, right? And, you know, we've already discussed this as a board. This has already been budgeted for, you know, as you mentioned. So I don't know whether or not it honestly falls under the new legislation. I think we've already had this project going and it's already on the table. So I don't know that it even needs to be discussed by that committee, but maybe that's incorrect. So I think it's a good idea that for today's dollar, we go forward, we do what's best for kids, and we make this space at Spring Creek High School for the kids there now and in the future. So any other discussion before we vote? All right, all in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye and the motion carries. All right, thank you. Item 2.3 is receipt, review, and possible approval of policy JBA, minimum age required for kindergarten and first grade. This is for possible action.
Thanks. So this was heard last meeting for first reading. The red line version, there's no red on it, but it's called the red line. We did make an addition at the end of paragraph 1. And then there are no other, we kind of toyed with some areas that maybe could need some wording change, but ultimately determined not to, because it pretty directly reflects exactly how it's phrased in NRS in those areas. And so that is the only edit from last meeting, is that end of paragraph 1. So happy to answer any more questions. Candace is also here if it gets a little more specific and we need her assistance, but feel free to ask any questions.
All right, any questions from the board?
No questions, just a comment. Previously, I had indicated that I had some questions that I wanted to discuss with Mr. Anderson. I feel that those questions have been resolved and I'm happy to move forward.
Well, if
And
you would
along
like
those
to move
lines,
forward, go ahead.
Move to approve policy JBA, minimum age required for kindergarten and first grade.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye and the motion carries. Item 2.4 is receipt, review, and possible approval of policy GDB02, substitute teachers, licensed employees. This is also for possible action.
Thank you. Similarly, also heard last meeting, no additional changes have been made. No suggestions were made and we haven't found anything else to change. So it's exactly as was 2 weeks ago.
All right, any discussion from the board? How would you like?
Chair, move to approve policy GDB02, substitute teachers, licensed employees.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we'll give that one to Adriana. All right, any other discussion before we vote? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye and the motion carries. Item 2.5 is receipt, review, and discussion of proposed changes to policy IDFA, curriculum design, interscholastic activities eligibility to represent the school. This is a non-action item.
Thank you. So this one is an existing policy. It's a revision, proposed revision for first reading today. Background information states that, so this policy was last revised in 2012. There have been quite a few changes to NIAA's eligibility requirements. And so this policy has been updated to represent those changes. As always, legal does a great job cleaning other type of language up too. But the vast majority of those changes are simply to mirror NIAA. What you will see a lot in here is very specific eligibility requirements from like grade standpoint, from if there's an infraction regarding substance use or abuse or possession, how those situations are handled. And it's that type of eligibility explanation in here. I will point out that nothing in here, and I guess I can be corrected from the back corner of the room if I'm misspeaking, but nothing in here is nothing that is new in this proposed revision is different from what we've been doing. We've been following the changes in that NIAA, but between 2012 and now, none of those things had been updated in the policy. So it doesn't change practice, it changes what's written.
All right, any questions from the board?
Couple of things just to
Recommendations?
point out, yeah, from recommendation standpoint. I visited with Mr. Anderson on this, but just so the board is aware of it as well. Second sentence of the policy seems a bit odd, so I would recommend that we drop the word not.
Yes.
So that it now reads, it should be considered by all that the program is larger than each individual. And I would recommend that under 4AI that we change, sorry, I apologize, 1CI and 1CII. That's in section 1, subsection C, subsection 1 and 2, that any reference to Fridays as a grade check now be changed to Thursday, since we are now on a 4-day week.
Yes, thank you. I had those notes and got in my groove, but forgot to say it. So thank you for bringing it up. Yes, I have those marked down, and we will get those changes made for the next presentation of this. Good catches.
Any other questions or discussion?
I have a few. Who does the grade checks?
It could be different people at each campus, but it's usually an administrator or potentially an athletic director. Coaches sometimes are involved. It just kind of depends from campus to campus who's in charge of doing that. But and really, it's not just one person. It's usually a collaborative effort because there's a lot of athletes at any given time.
And then
AJ, sorry, it's typically the athletic secretary that does it. And then she gives them to the AD or the athletic administrator, and then he checks, and then they go to the coaches. It's a pretty quick process. Karen would run eligibility at Spring Creek, and it would take, she'd start at noon and she'd have it in by 1, and we'd have it out to the kids and coaches by the end of the day.
okay. And this may be a silly question, but I'll ask it anyway. What's considered passing? Because some places,
Not enough.
I should know that.
60%.
Yeah.
A 60, is
Yep.
that what you said?
Yep.
Okay. And then, sorry, let me go through my notes here real fast. This is like page 6, I think. And this is just a typo, I think. So it's at the very bottom, it says activities for the remainder of the student's high school career
yeah,
instead of
Remainder.
remainder.
Yep. Thank you.
And then does each school have an athletic director, or it depends on the size of the school, or do we just have one athletic director over everyone in the district?
Each school has an AD. A lot of schools have, the bigger schools have an administrator. Elko and Spring Creek have an athletic administrator. And then like Carlin, their VP does a lot of the athletic stuff, but I don't think we have a school that doesn't have an AD, which is a teacher, a coach that takes that position.
Okay. And then it mentions a substance abuse program coordinator. Who has been doing that? Because did I understand you correctly that even though this policy is outdated, the district is still kept up on
Yeah, so I think what that probably is referring to is after the kids, after they get a substance abuse offense, after the first, they have to attend an alert class, which is put on by the SROs that deals with substance abuse, the dangers of it. And then after a second offense, students have to do a drug and alcohol screening, that you have to you have to bring in a certified drug and alcohol screener. I don't know how the other schools do it. We were fortunate enough at Spring Creek High School when I was there to have one of our counselors could do that. So as far as a substance abuse coordinator, I've never heard of it.
I mean, that's not a title someone would have. I would just read that as the person who's running the substance abuse program, and which in our case has been alert.
Maybe it can be reworded then. Because if we don't have one,
The person is still coordinating the substance abuse program, though. I would say since it's not capitalized, it's not a proper noun. It's simply something that someone does.
okay.
One of the SROs that leads that program. I can't remember who it is now, but is one of the SROs that's responsible for doing that.
Okay, and then you mentioned that they have to have an evaluation. And that you were lucky Spring Creek High School had someone. So what about other schools that may not have that? Because 10 days and maybe, because I'm just asking questions because I don't know much about the sports part. So the 10 days, I'm thinking that could be, sometimes it's hard to get into those people to do those kind of things. So is that not a problem? Like, stop worrying about 10 days?
It hasn't been, there was one, so we don't get, it's very rare that we get a kid who gets past that first offense. In my 10 years of doing the Spring Creek High School, we had 2. And I think, I'm not exactly sure I remember this correctly, but I think Elko had a kid once who got to his second, and we just used the counselor from Spring Creek to do it.
Okay.
It's something we have to pay that person to do because it's outside of their duties. And I think he went in and did it for the Elko kid too, and I'm sure he would do it for others.
But this one says the parent has to pay for it, I thought.
Yes.
The parent has to pay whatever his fee was, and I can't remember what it was. Sorry about that.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure. And then you said the SROs are the ones offering the sessions, the classes they have to take.
Yep.
Saturday 8 to 4 class that the student has to attend, or 8 to 3. Student has to attend, and one of their parents has to attend it with them. So it puts a little bit of, if that's my kid that gets caught chewing and I got to spend my Saturday sitting in an alert class with him, that's a little extra punishment too.
Okay. And then the suggested assignments that they have, that's something that we don't control? That's just something you
That
pick
comes from the
list?
alert program as well.
Say that again.
That's from the NIAA.
Okay.
Altogether,
assignments.
it's an assignment that follows up the alert program. It's all things that, and the whole purpose of that, well, I mean, there's multiple purposes. One, obviously, it's the education and you're trying to affect positive change. But by doing the alert class, they can also shorten the term of their initial suspension from, I think it's 6 weeks to 2 weeks. And
By doing one of the suggested assignments?
by attending the alert class and completing the assignment, yeah, they can get them back
But
in sooner.
whatever
They
school
have
they're
to
at.
do the assignment to get eligible. The alert class can reduce it. Like CJ said, if it's a second, from 6 to 2, and if it's the first, it's from 5 to 3 days.
Okay, but the school can pick whatever suggested assignment. They're just picking from that list.
Yeah, there's a list of like 10, and what I would do is I would allow the kid to pick it. Usually they'd pick doing a report. They'd bring in a 2-paragraph report that they wrote out pencil 5 minutes before, and I'd say, nope, you got to go do it again. And then they'd come back with something a little bit more formal.
Okay. And the only reason why I'm bringing that up, I guess it's the teacher in me. I didn't like some of the report writing because now you can just get on chat. I mean, you can do the AI and have someone write a report for you and make it pretty easy. And like number 9, interviewing a member of a local AA, it's called Alcoholics Anonymous for a reason. Like, I don't know, it's supposed to be anonymous. So I wouldn't want kids going, hey, walk around and ask who's in AA so you can do an interview. So that's why I was asking if people get to, like, if we get to choose what they do versus the other ones. So just curious. Thanks for answering my questions.
Are any other questions or suggestions on this one?
I do.
Go ahead, Josh.
4C, there's a repeat. It's just, we had our own sentence. They added the sentence. After the add, which I believe is just from the NRS, after it in paragraph in the parentheses, unless prescribed by a student's physician for medical purposes, it's basically in the sentence before it. E-cigarettes, other products that deliver a drug, nicotine, or mimics the reaction of nicotine without a prescription from a physician. Oh, without, okay. I read it wrong. Sorry. So I read, and then it says unless prescribed by students. So, but it's actually in there. I believe it's in the NRS like that too, but all right. So I apologize there. The other thing, I was reading it, I was told otherwise about co-curricular activities versus extracurricular activities. So my question then is how do co-curricular activities which have grades then abide by these policies if someone is ineligible to participate?
So it works, if it's like the band and it's a performance that's part of the class that they're going out and performing in some festival and it's part of the graded part of the class, then because it's part of the class, they go. If it's something that they're going to attend, like marching in the parade or something they're just doing as a community service or for fun, then the student isn't allowed to go. But if it's a graded assignment, we can't say you can't do that because you're in trouble.
Okay. And there's no, that would come from a policy coming from us then, as far as that would come from Elko County School District, not necessarily NIAA. Right, we're just piggybacking for co-curriculars off of the NIAA.
Since I've been in the district, we've just selected that co-curriculars would follow the same as extracurriculars.
Okay. And with those policies that we're doing, can those be put onto an actual policy would that be a separate policy than IDFA, or would it be something we'd add to IDFA since we have co-curriculars on here?
You know, I've always just viewed it as the policy says eligibility to represent the school.
Okay.
So that was kind of the blanket coverage that I've always understood it to be.
So I guess that would be my suggestion, which is if we have those policies, add co-curricular, like you're saying we do, which I believe is fair. I'm not saying it's not, but have another paragraph for those in there so it outlines it in the policy if this policy oversees it.
Or at the very least, we could also look wherever it says extracurricular, and if it also applies to co-curricular, we could.
Yeah,
say
however it needs to be put in there.
extracurricular/co-curricular.
Yeah, not trying to be a lawyer, just saying, hey, throw those policies in there so we have it written down. So then there's no, I guess, I don't want to say leave it, but there's no fuzziness in that.
Yeah.
So.
So to that last point on the co-curricular, I'm assuming NIAA is going to trump any policy we have anyways. So
The NIAA has no say over co-curriculars. They're not a part of it.
correct. I apologize. So I should have clarified which direction I was going. In the co-curricular, if it's part of the grade, we allow them to compete. There's nothing, we wouldn't be able to create a policy that says, hey, we want our students to be able to participate and not get kicked out of a sanctioned event. So we're now going to make the grade required on being able to play. Does that make sense? So for example, in high school, my French teacher was my baseball coach. The expectation was in his class, what was done in class was reflected on the field and back and forth. We couldn't say, hey, in order to get a grade in this class, or part of your grade is now that you play a game. If we made that policy, NIAA would overrule it anyways, correct?
And we couldn't do that according to our grading policy already. You can't issue grades for anything that's outside of the curriculum in your course.
Okay, so that the co-curricular works for that. Extracurricular, of course, is by definition extracurricular. Yep. Great, thank you.
One more question came up, sorry. So the right of appeal then follows this program for co-curriculars as well. They go through the athletic or administrator, principal, superintendent, designee, NIAA board. Well, obviously the NIAA wouldn't be part of it, but they would still go through the same for co-curriculars.
Yeah, it would just go to that top level that's within the school district, and then that's where it ends. There's no body after that form to appeal to.
But they still would go for, so we're talking like band, choraleers, I don't know, or choir,
Speech and debate.
speech and debate, was it FFA, all of them.
Yep.
Ag, they would go to the athletic director, or the other is what we're covering. for-
Other administrator.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, just clarifying. So,
The appeal would never go, well, I wouldn't say never. I can't imagine a situation where the AD is making those decisions. That's going to be the administrator making the decisions.
Okay, just double checking.
Unless the administrator is also the AD,
Well, there you go. There you go.
which it was in Wells.
Yeah.
The VP was also the AD, so.
Yep.
Yeah, other questions or
Thank you.
guidance on this policy?
I have one more. Will you remind me, is there, I don't know if it'd be policy, but do teachers have, I don't even know how to word it, like they have to have their grades in once a week, or you know what I mean? Because I don't want some teacher that hasn't put in their grades for 3 weeks or something, and then of course they qualify because there's one grade in there or something.
Yeah, it's not, I don't know if I guess it's not reflected in policies up on this topic, but in our grading policy, there are delineations as to how frequently teachers have to have grades
Okay.
in of formative, of summative,
Yeah.
because and for lots of reasons, grades need to be current all throughout the semester. But yeah, certainly for kids who have, it could go both ways, right? It could either help a kid who really ought not to be playing, or it could hurt a kid who probably is doing what he's supposed to do to get back on the field, but stuff isn't getting entered. So yeah, either way, the grading policy covers how frequently those things should be entered.
Thank you.
Does that policy have, is it in play for the makeup work too? That like helps out with that? Does it line up with this too as well? As far as missed work for, let's say, sanctioned events. I
So
guess
for
is-
that, they shouldn't enter a grade. And that's kind of been a fight at
Yeah.
the school sites because, okay, I'm not entering a grade. Well, then Johnny says, oh, I've got an A. And then 3 weeks down the road, he still hasn't made it up, but it comes in half. So and then his grade changes. So honestly, that in my experience, it isn't a problem because usually if the kid turned in work, the coach would come to me and say, hey, Billy said he turned in this assignment last Thursday and it didn't get graded. I'd call the teacher and the teacher would say, oh yeah, I missed that. I'll get it graded. And then they'd sign a form. Yeah, the kid was on the ineligible list by mistake. He's eligible now.
There's a lot of communication that goes on pretty regularly between teachers and coaches and administration just to make sure.
We
these
usually have
programs
to,
are-
as someone who's been in that side of it, it's constant. So, there was one other thing I wanted to read for parents, because most of them aren't going to pull this policy out. However, they are going to have children in, where did it go? Pardon me, I'm sorry. I basically was just going to read that it states that it doesn't matter that it's not around official school days. It's throughout the year if you're a part of the program. So oh, here we go. Policy remains in effect for every calendar year during the course of a student's high school career and when he or she is directly involved in a school activity occurring at etc. This policy remains in effect regardless of whether a student is currently participating in extracurricular activity. So you're basically not going to be in possession of alcohol, tobacco, or other drug stuff, including vapes, which seem to be a big problem. So,
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so translation, if I only play football, right? Football season's over. Or maybe that's a bad example. I only play basketball and it's not basketball season. It's September and I'm in possession of something in the fall. I'm ineligible until I go through the processes. You're absolutely right. It also isn't about on campus. If we get a credible picture or information that an athlete or anyone who is supposed to be representing our school is at a party over the weekend, and that information comes to us and it's legitimate information, or we have reasonable suspicion that it's legitimate, then the same process follows. It's a privilege to represent our schools, and we have high standards of conduct for that. And we're not trying to just find kids to bust them. We're not looking for reasons to kick kids off of teams. These programs are important. They save lives sometimes, and keep kids in school. And so we really want people to be involved, but we also want to our programs to teach kids important lessons. And so, yeah, you gotta be on your best all the time, which is the reality of real life. You can't You can't be a good driver 90% of the time and then go 150 miles per hour through a neighborhood and kill someone. Doesn't matter that you were good 90% of the time, you killed somebody. So we got to be on our best all the time.
Just to clarify that a little bit more, this policy goes into effect the minute they check the box when they're filling out the register my athlete that they check. I read the drug and alcohol policy, click yes. So theoretically, you could have a kid who didn't play sports until he was a senior. They got busted 4 or 5 times as a freshman, sophomore, junior, whatever, and then he comes out. Those don't show up because he hadn't
Been part of it.
anything yet.
Yep. Because it is an IAA
Yep.
policy. Yep,
Yep.
absolutely. Last comment is I didn't recognize you for a second, so I just wanted to make sure. But you look very handsome, sir. So that's great.
Cool, they look like a fat. So the beard's coming back.
He's taken enough abuse today alone that that beard will be back soon. Poor Paul.
But I love
Poor
it.
guy.
I love it.
All right, any other thoughts or comments on this? All right, before we move on, I'll just say, yeah, when parents and kids have to go through register my athlete, they read all of this stuff. And if they don't, they have checked something that says, yes, I have, and I understand. So if they violate it, even if they haven't read it, they said they read it. So, we want our kids involved. We want them to represent our schools and our district well. And it's important to have policies in place where they know what's expected of them. So they understand that, parents and students alike. All right, we'll move on to item 2.6, receipt, review, and discussion of proposed new policy IDFB, curriculum design, interscholastic athletics, general eligibility.
All right, so in going through IDFA, we discovered that we needed an IDFB to be in policy. And IDFB is much more generic. It's more like this. It's not eligibility to represent in the way we just talked about with grades and substance abuse and that sort of thing, but it's more like you have to be in this grade. You can only participate in this many seasons, lays out how it works for a homeschool student in the zone they live in. And so it's very generic eligibility requirements, and this is specifically for sanctioned sports with NIAA.
Any questions on this one from the board?
Just one question, and we have some really outstanding kids. I don't know that this is possible, but full-time at Great Basin College is considered 12 credits. It's possible somebody could be going for dual credit and be an athlete and have 12 credits of college. And I'm concerned that we've now said you're no longer allowed to play, even though Great Basin College currently doesn't have an athletics program. We tried to get one started, but we just haven't been successful yet. And I would hate to hold somebody back if they want to use that kind of time. I just don't know if there's a good solution to that, but that's my concern, is that if somebody wants to do that, I don't think we should hold them back from doing that just because they're trying to have an athletic career and still at the same time prepare for secondary.
It's a good question. I don't think that would preclude someone. I also don't think it's possible to take 12 credits. Not at a given time though, because enrolled full-time in college, because it's not saying you can't have more than 12 credits, it's enrolled full-time. And so given that a high school student would only get a certain number of credits in a given semester, I guess it's possible they could, very unlikely. But I don't think.
CJ, I think
we have talked to NIAA, but I don't think they'd be excluded.
They would still be our student.
It's dual credits. It's high school credit as well. So I think it'd be okay.
Our students taking dual credit aren't GBC students. They're still our students. They're just earning GBC credit. So they meet those credit requirements. I think you have to be enrolled in 6 credits as an underclassman and then 2 credits as a senior. So they'd still meet those requirements for the credit requirements according to be a full-time student.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure we're good. Thank you.
It happened. Yeah.
All right, any other questions on this one? All right, seeing none. We will move on to item 2.7, receipt of quarterly update reports.
Cool. You've got 3 tonight. We'll start with Ray Smith, Director of School Improvement. And then when Ray's done, we'll have Candace Turnahue, and then we'll have Paul Allen after.
All right, good evening. I elected not to shave, so hopefully you still recognize me. So 3, I guess, is the magic number tonight. I have, there's 3 of us and I have 3 items to talk about in the world of school improvement. And in true education fashion, they're just riddled with acronyms. So our first one is the SPP, which is a part of the CIP process. And if you remember from my quarterly update at this point last year, SPP stands for School Performance Plan, and CIP stands for Continuous Improvement Process. So one of the big things that I've been working on the last couple of weeks is getting prepped and prepared for our teachers or administrators and teachers eventually to come back, and they spend a lot of time in the fall working on their school performance plans. Because of the way the system is set up with it being a continuous improvement process, they'll be using the plans that were created last year that they worked through and revised towards the end of the school year and making some edits, changes, possibly restarting over, but for the most cases, probably just revising their plans from 22-23 to update for 23-24, and they'll be creating those plans, which of course go onto our school websites once they're finished. And there's a review process. I think a few of you participated in that last year. That'll be going on again mid-November. So we'll keep you posted on that. But that's the first thing in my world that is occupying time right now is getting ready for the SPPs. Second thing is the acronym is SBAC. And we're starting to receive some results from our spring 2023 SBAC and science and even WIDA, another acronym there. That's our assessment that the REL students take. And so we're starting to receive some preliminary results back. It's a little bit too early still for me to, get up here and give you a lot of details about that because they're literally just coming in within the last week or so. So I'm working on compiling that. The preliminary information is that we have some areas where there was some improvement, some areas where results kind of stayed stagnant, and maybe even somewhere there was some, unfortunately, some minor regression, but nothing major in any either way. But that's starting to come in. So I'll be sharing more information with the board and with the public and with our staff as they come back to work after we had a little more time to review it and go over it. Next one is updates regarding assessments. SB 9 was legislation that made it so that our end of course exams, the acronym there is EOCs, end of course exams will no longer be taking place. So anyone who had students at the high school level last year knew that we had our students participate in some end of course exams after a probably 2 or 3 year hiatus from them. After 1 year, they're now no longer existing. So one less test that our kids have to take. So, and then the next acronym is CCR, the College and Career Ready Assessment. I'm part of a team that across the state where people were selected to review some proposals for our new CCR assessment, which is of course a requirement for graduation. Last several years, it's been ACT, may end up being ACT again, but they're one of, I think, 4 or 5 vendors who have submitted proposals. So within the next, hopefully, short period of time, we'll know who the new vendor for that is and what assessment our students will be taking in the spring to earn that credit.
Hey, Ray.
Yes.
Just because I've heard the question from people who've seen the bill about the EOCs ending. Would you give a brief explanation about the difference between EOCs and final exams?
Between EOCs and final exams? Yeah. So final exams are teacher created. They're created by, if you're in Algebra 1 class, your Algebra 1 teacher will create your final exam. End of course exams are state created exams that are aligned in theory with the course content that all kids in the state take. And this last year they were for Algebra 1, English 10, and then also an integrated math course, which was only offered in our county in one school at Elko High School. So I guess the major difference, I think maybe is what you're getting at, is that final exams are locally created by our Elko County teachers. EOCs are state created exams. Is that what you were looking for?
Yeah, just to help, because some people hear end of course and they think, oh, so our kids don't even have to take a test at the end of the year. All the high school kids, it's a requirement in our grading policies that there's a final exam for every class. And so kids still take final exams. They just won't have this state mandated one. But they will all still take
Good
final
distinction, yeah.
courses. They will take exams at the end of their course, but they are not EOCs.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions on that? Kind of quickly. Okay. And then the last thing that I had, the acronym here is SCIEI. And so this is, it stands for, I'm going to get it right. So I'm going to look at my notes here. Student Centered Institute for Educational Improvement. And so this is a partnership that we've entered into. And it's actually a partnership that we were in last year with just Oahe Combined School. And we're now, thanks to some funds that we secured through our 1003A grant, and we're going to be able to expand that partnership with this organization, where they've worked with other districts in the state of Nevada for probably the last 7 or 8 school years. And I got a chance to participate in the work that they were doing in Oahe last year, and was really impressed with what's going on there. And so basically what it is, I'll just give you a quick overview, is they are an organization that works with districts to help put a framework, is what they call it. And that really truly is a good term for it. Framework in place that provides some consistent structures throughout the district that focus on the learning that's taking the learning that our students are that's taking place in our classroom. And what's really nice about it is that, and what really impressed me when I was up in Oahe last year, was that it's not a cookie cutter process. It's something that our teachers get the opportunity to create Elko County specific structures, course summary documents, assessments, a whole host of things, but specific to the things that are going on in our classrooms. And what we're really looking for and hoping for is that it's going to create some consistency across our very large district, right? What we want to see is that a student taking an Algebra 1 course at a school here in the Elko area and a student taking an Algebra 1 course here, or an Algebra 1 course in Wendover, is receiving some similarities of content, and the teachers are providing assessments that are similar so that we can compare data, we can talk to each other, talk about what's going on. And our goal for year 1 is to kind of coincide with our new math instructional materials and work through our math courses to create some of those structures and put those in place, and then ultimately hopefully move forward and expand it to all of the content areas. And so it's an exciting partnership that we're looking forward to. We're just at the very beginning stages of it, and so we're still kind of teasing out exactly what it's going to look like. We'll be discussing it with our administrators tomorrow at administrative council, and getting their input on how things can go. And it's just an exciting opportunity. Represents something maybe a little bit different than how we've done things in Elko County, at least in the time that I've been here. But it's an exciting thing because it gives us a chance to really start focusing on what is taking place in our classrooms, improving some consistency across our district, and using the expertise that we have in our staff, our teachers, our administrators, who know what our kids need, and have an opportunity to put some stuff in place for them. So I'll be talking with you more about, to me, SCIEI is kind of a little bit hard to roll off the tongue. So I say SCI. I don't know if that's what they're really called or not, but I'll be talking with you a little bit more about SCI probably the next couple of times that you hear me give you a quarterly update. So those are my 3 things. Questions?
Any questions from the board?
Mr. Smith, briefly on Sky, is this intended to be a frontline program where we're getting teachers from each of the schools that are teaching their respective subjects together to talk about it? Or is this more of an administrative thing? If it's a frontline thing, is this, how much is this pulling them out of the classroom?
So to answer your first question, definitely a frontline thing. I'm not an algebra teacher. I'm not a world history teacher. You don't want me making those decisions for you, right? So we're gonna utilize the teachers to do that. And to the second question, the answer is of how much we're pulling out of the classroom as absolute minimally as possible.
And in fact, Dr. Stephen Perdera is the director of this company, and I meet with him on a regular basis. And we actually just had a meeting a few days ago. And that was one of the points that I made was, as we transition to a 4-day school week, every day counts for so much more of a percentage of the instruction. And so we need to put things in place so that we're not taking teachers out of the classroom. And so he's aware of that, fully understands it, and we're going to minimize that to the greatest extent possible.
All right, great, thank you.
Good evening. I, like Mr. Smith, also have 3 things I'd like to talk to you about tonight. The first thing is elementary summer school. We started elementary summer school yesterday. We have over 66 teachers teaching it and have over 500 students attending. And I just want to give a huge shout out to all our summer school personnel. We have teachers, long-term subs, nurses, bus drivers, and admin. And just say thank you for stepping up and taking on this additional responsibility. The next thing I'd like to talk to you about is our math curriculum adoption. All our math materials have been delivered and they are on all the campuses. The elementary teachers were sent a virtual training for them to peruse. It was kind of like a teaser. It kind of showed them just the ins and outs of their teacher editions. They're going to get more formal training done on August 21st and 22nd. And secondary math teachers, they were trained in May. And then they also have additional training on Success Maker, which is a component of their Envision Mathematics. And that's also going to happen in a couple of weeks. And then last spring, we ended our counseling program pilot. And the counseling team met and they decided that they wanted to go with Quaver Ed, and that program best fit our needs. The program has been ordered. I have an onboarding meeting with Quaver Ed next week on how we can coordinate IT and get all that stuff figured out before school starts. And then the elementary school counselors will be formally trained August 22nd on that also. The pilot team has expressed that they'd like to get together before that though, and kind of come up with like a scope and sequence. And Quaver has one already, so we'll just be tweaking it to help guide the counselors through our first year implementation with that. And through various board meetings, Mr. Anderson, I almost called you CJ. Superintendent Anderson has been talking about our ECSD strategic plan and how it has 4 pillars. And the 2 pillars that my 3 things touch are pillar 2, which is teacher and learning excellence, and pillar 4, which is student and staff wellness. And you'll see the more I give updates, I'm going to make correlations to what I'm doing to our pillars and our strategic plan. Do you have any questions?
I have a couple.
Okay.
Were there any parent comments about the curriculum?
I had a handful of comments, and by handful, I mean 4. Yeah, and it is like, I don't like this program.
Of this one or a different one?
It was all of them. So, yeah, I still have them. If you want to look at them, they're just, it didn't give us much to go off of, honestly.
Okay. And then summer school goes to when?
It goes until, I knew you were going to ask this.
Sorry,
August
I don't need an exact, is it
22nd.
3 weeks, 4
Yeah,
weeks?
it's 12 days. It's Monday through Thursday. Teachers go for 4 hours, students go for 3.
And then is there any assessment of whether this is useful or not useful, but does something for the kids?
So what I do is in years past, we utilize MAP scores. I compare their spring MAP score to their fall to see if there's an increase. This year we tried something different. We used the reading fluency test with NWEA. So the kids tested in the spring, and then we're going to use the fluency test again in the fall to see if there's an increase in scores. And the reason we picked fluency is because we thought we'd kind of narrow the topics down to help the summer school teachers kind of narrow their focus, because they do get kids from all walks of academics. And we thought fluency would be an easy thing to narrow in on, especially if MAP has a test that assesses for that.
So the teachers know they're working on reading fluency.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. That makes more sense.
Yeah, they had a training on that last week.
Okay.
Thank you, Susan, because that prompted another question. Ms. Turnhill, on that, the 500 plus students, is this elective? Is this targeted due to grade performance, or is this a mixture of both?
It's a mixture of both. We start out with a targeted population, but by the time people either accept or deny the request, then you just start pulling for kids to get your class numbers up.
All right, any other questions from the board?
I'm sorry, so the Quaver Ed is for,
The counseling, elementary counseling, kinder through fifth.
okay. And that was, you had given us the curriculum already, correct? Is that the
Yes.
one the binder that we had?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
All right. Thank you.
All right,
for the
thank
update.
you.
Thank you.
This is Mr. Allen.
Oh.
Get it out of your system. So I'm the third, and I also had 3 things to talk to you about. I've been working on our EOP. It's 200 and something pages, all statutorily required, and I'm trying to whittle it down to a flip book that's a little more usable if we have something go on. I've got it down to about 80 pages now. I'm working with emergency management through the community and then the fire department. I sent it off to them, and they're going to whittle a little bit more, and then hopefully soon we've got something we can put together. And the school sites can use it as an example, because they all have their individual EOPs about how to get theirs into a more functional document. I'm also working on, we're going to do a foreign language adoption next year, which is a much, much smaller adoption than we did for math. We've got a scattering of German, French, and Spanish classes, mostly at Spring Creek and Elko High School. So I'll be meeting with those teachers during our first couple of days back to look at some samples that I've got so we can pick what we're going to pilot. This one is going to be much easier because every foreign language teacher is going to be part of the pilot program. So we'll get that started. I'm hoping to have that done by Christmas, so we're not in such a rush to get the books and get them out. Like Candace said, we've got all the math books out at the sites. The Success Maker training is coming up that week, and that's for 6 through 8, and it's kind of a get kids ready for algebra as a freshman program, because a lot of kids really, really struggle with algebra. The suicide plan prevention stuff, I'm working on that too with SROs and then the mental health people, Larry, Rob, and then the school nurse. I've got some samples from other districts and also from the state. The state said they were going to have guidance sometime before school started, a new guidance document that we'll work off from, and then get all of those documents in place. The training is set for September 20 something. It's our first PD day on a Friday. So all of our staff, with the exception of some coaches and people who are gone, will get trained on the suicide prevention stuff through the state. So we'll have all of that done by the end of the year. We'll get a makeup date for those who aren't going to be available and have those documents out and a plan in place and be ready to roll.
I just have one thing. Okay. You're good. Oh, okay. Is that
Go ahead, go
okay?
ahead.
I didn't mean to ask him first. I
was looking at you. I
apologize.
was
Yeah.
ignoring that. Go ahead,
Okay.
Josh.
Thank you. All right.
Is it going to be facial hair related? Because I won't answer.
No. I will say, when I did shave my beard, everyone said that I needed to grow back. So I sympathize with you, actually. So
I started with a mustache, and that was worse than this. So, yeah.
okay. What I just want, just a suggestion, just because it came from a friend in the community and they had an interaction with some of the numbers we've been given in the last probably year as far as suicide prevention, suicide contacts. I would encourage you or whoever is part of doing it to call those and just see how effective they are. Because
Are you talking the local?
I'm talking all of them from the national to the local. It was very non-impressive how that actually what actually happened in that interaction as opposed to what we've all been told. So, and since then I've had two others. One was a friend. Now I have two patients that have said the same thing, and they're not, so that we don't put a part of a policy that we're going to use as a district. Let's have effective means as opposed to what's there. Hopefully that was 3 interactions over 1,000 or hundreds to thousands. We don't want any, but that were bad. But the trend is that they're not as effective as we are being told.
Okay.
So please just call them and see how it goes. Make sure we have effective ways of doing things.
Absolutely.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yeah, go
Mr.
ahead.
Allen, you indicated the state has new guidance coming out. Is this guidance on training or is this guidance on potentially us having to reevaluate the plan?
The policy won't change. It'll be the actual plan part that we're statutorily required to have. And our existing plan, I didn't even know what we had it. I found it going through the EOP, and then I found out from the state that basically it was the last template they gave and it had just been inserted in the plan. So we were compliant. And it's going to be similar to that. It's going to be like their template, but we'll tweak it to make it fit what we need. Yep.
All right, any other questions from the board? All right, thanks, Mr. Allen. All right, we will move on to item 3.1, which is our consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Chair votes aye and the motion carries. Item 4.1 is a report from our NASB director.
Not much to add since last meeting, although I'm curious, I don't mean to put you on the spot either, Mr. Anderson, but just a little update. I'll wait for you on the superintendent's report on your meeting you went to. I'm sorry I had to miss that with the Republican committee and the review on the legislature. I was curious to hear about that. So, and I was even gonna reach out to you beforehand, not to put you on the spot, but I knew you'd have it anyway, so wasn't worried about it. But just a reminder, we have the professional development opportunity on multi-tiered systems of support in action and on conflict resolution and de-escalation skills training. That's September 9th at Tuscany Suites in Las Vegas. And we will also have the NASB meeting the day before. So for any more information on that, go ahead and get with me. We can get set up, but I will be attending that. That's all I have.
All right. Thank you. And I would say if anyone else is available to go to that meeting, it would be great to communicate that sooner rather than later so accommodations can be made. All right. Item 4.2 is items from board members. All right. Do we have any items from board members?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
A couple of things. The Nevada Promise opened today. So for students that are interested in Nevada Promise, I'm sorry, Mr. Anderson, if I took that from you. I had a text from one of my friends at GBC, so they asked me to put that in there. And the second thing is I was approached this weekend in regards to AB 319. This is in regards to, among other things, school lunches. It did pass the legislature. It was vetoed by the governor after legislature adjourned. So it'll now sit at the Secretary of State's desk for roughly 2 years, unless a special session is called specifically for that item. The concern was if school lunches have been vetoed, what are we doing? In visiting with Mr. Anderson, just to put it out there for the public, school lunches are continuing this year because the state has enough money for this year. The bill that was vetoed was a biennium funding bill. So as such, this year we're good. We'll see what the state says next year and we can address it then. But the question was, why is the school district not doing anything? School starts in a month and we need to know if we're feeding our kids. So if I spoke out of line, please correct me, Mr. Anderson, but I wanted to just throw that out there. because I don't do social media and I don't know what else has been said in social media, but that's what I've heard and reported. And Madam President, thank you. I rest.
Certainly. Looks like
Yeah,
Mr.
just
Anderson has a response.
last we've heard school, all lunches are funded through this school year. And that's the fiscal year we're worried about right now is this coming school year. We kind of faced the same thing the last couple school years. It was our lunch is going to be paid for entirely. And yes, we found the money. And then yes, we found the money. And you know, it was about 4 or 5 years ago that we had some kids had free lunch, some kids had reduced lunch, and other kids paid for their lunch. And so I just projecting forward, should all lunches not be federally or state funded? It's probably the direction we would go back to. It's a good guess.
Is there a mechanism in place that if somebody wants to pay for lunch for their kids this year, we can accept that and apply that towards, I don't know, future lunches or to a program that's dedicated to lunch funding? Maybe that's a question for Judy. I don't know. But the answer, I mean, basically,
Yeah.
like you said, that the train's coming down the track, we're going to need to start paying for lunches. So
Yeah.
if people want to contribute now, I guess, can they?
I suppose if it would qualify as a donation, right? A private donation. And so we would just treat that donation like we would what fund that would go into and how it would get apportioned and that sort of thing. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
If they want to make a donation, they just need to tell us, specify what its allowable uses are.
Thank you.
So we can follow that.
All right, any other items from board members? All right, we'll move right into our superintendent's report.
Thanks. Pretty brief from me tonight. So I will first report on the Republican town hall meeting we had, and it was a good event. The moderator was brutal. Just kidding, Mr. Hoffman. He was very kind. Really good turnout from the people up at the desk. A lot of, what do we have, about 50, 60, something like that, people sitting out in the audience. So it was a good turnout. Really great questions. Super appreciative of our senators and assemblymen and assemblywomen who came to share their perspectives on the legislative process. There were some really awesome insights. There were some really disappointing insights into the legislative process. But overall, my takeaway was we have a lot of people. Politicians get a bad rap a lot of times, but we have some people who definitely care about Elko County and are there to speak honestly and openly. And it was just a good, I thought it was a great event. And I'm really glad I could be part of it. Was able to speak about, probably spoke about 7 or 8 bills that are a pretty big deal. We've talked about them here at the board meetings before and just informed some of the community about it. And they had some questions about them and was able to answer those questions. But yeah, I don't have a whole lot of specific details. Thank you. Susan was there in the audience listening. And so, yeah, that's probably about all I want to report on that. But yeah, great event. Good to be alongside other good people. I also, so just, Candace already, I guess she already talked about elementary summer school is in full swing, so that's good. And then just so you know, a couple of big things that are happening this week. Today we had our first day of 2 full days of training with all of our principals and vice principals. They were all sitting right here in this room until 4 o'clock when we quickly transform the room for this board meeting. And then we will quickly transform it back because they're back again tomorrow. And 100% of them were here in attendance. In addition to just, kind of yearly items that we take care of, they also, we got a great hour-long training from Aptogee on our new website and the functionality of our new app that is nearing total usefulness. We're getting real close, and some more staff next week will be getting trained on the same program and platform. And they also got training from a group of our county emergency management officials. We had Lee Cavanis here from county emergency. He's the county emergency manager. We also had our chief of police. We had our undersheriff. We had the assistant fire chief, or I'm probably using the wrong title, but maybe, I don't know. Someone from the city fire, the county fire, and then our EMS kind of leader. I apologize for not knowing all their titles, but they were all here to talk to our first points of contact at all our campuses about emergency management and get everybody on the same page for the very important priorities of our school safety and our kids' safety and staff safety. So that was great to have them there and real interactive training. So we'll do that again tomorrow. And then tomorrow night, we'll also start playing host to most of the superintendents in Nevada, as well as a good chunk of the Nevada Department of Education leadership. They're coming into town. Going to have some dinner together tomorrow night, and then we will have our monthly NAS meeting. I don't have to go to Vegas. I don't have to drive to Washoe. I get to sleep in my own bed before the NAS meeting this time, so that's really nice. But we're gonna meet out at Battleborn Youth Challenge Academy, give them a tour of the facility so they can get a real good up close perspective. I know that facility is starting to grow on a lot of us, and we're seeing the benefit that can have to kids from all walks of life. And so we're going to let the superintendents have a good close up of that. And so, yeah, we're going to treat them nicely here in Elko County. And then, yeah, so that's what's going on this week. Lots of staff are just starting to roll in group after group after group. So all the admin are back. Certain teachers will start coming back. Then all the teachers will come back. And yeah, so we're really, really close to the start of the school year, and you can feel it. And we're excited.
Any questions or guidance for our superintendent?
Yep.
All right. Thank you. We'll move on to item 6.1, which is approval of the accounts payable.
Madam President, move to approve the accounts payable.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Any questions or discussion, abstentions or disclosures? All right. I will disclose that I have a family member who is employed by one of our constant payees, but I will not be abstaining as usual. All right. If there are no other questions, all in favor of approving the accounts payable, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Chair votes aye, and the motion carries. Item 7.1 is a final opportunity for input from the public. Okay, come on up.
Thank you, Madam President. I really wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but since Mr. Anderson brought up the meeting we had, I just wanted to thank once again Mr. Anderson and Ms. Neal for coming to participate in that. But what I really want to talk about for just a minute is your earlier discussion regarding the county commission. Having been multiple years on the city council and going to your meetings and county commission meetings and city council meetings, I'm pretty aware how these various boards operate in their own little arena. And it would be, I think, of great benefit to the public if some of that could be more collaboratively done. I tried when I was on the city council. I never made much progress with it. I wasn't thinking about the school district, but I was thinking about the county. But somehow there seems to be a wall that sort of generates. We all have our own little view of what's going on. Without commenting on whether I think that project is the right place to spend money, I think your decision tonight on the basis that you used was correct. It seems to me like that was a project that was funded by pay-as-you-go. And this legislation, although it says that this panel should consider all capital projects, seems to me like it's put in place regarding the new tax and the new legislation. And I think your position is justified. But I guess what I'm suggesting is that you request a public agenda item on the county commission, and that representatives, Mr. Anderson or President Dastrup or whatever, go to the county commission in a public meeting and say you had received this from one of the commissioners and this is why you did what you did. And that you would like to start the discussions regarding the formation of this panel, which seems like a big bureaucracy to me, but nevertheless, it's what's in the legislation. I just think in the interest of collaboration and trust, a reach out would be worthwhile. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to make a comment? All right, seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you for your attendance and we'll see you next time.
Thank you all.